Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something you wanted to explore, scaling AI solutions across global enterprises. You sent over some PDF excerpts, and I gotta say, they're surprisingly practical. It's not all just theory. This stuff reads like a how-to guide.
And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're not just talking about the cool tech behind AI, but the strategy, the groundwork. That has to be laid to make these solutions work as well in, say, Buenos Aires as they
Yeah,
do in Berlin.
yeah, it's like I get that AI is powerful, but I never really thought about the complexities of making it work globally. The source dives right into the why, emphasizing the high stakes.
Yeah, because it really is about maximizing investments. Think about it. You've poured resources into developing an AI that predicts customer churn. Fantastic. But what if it's only trained on data from your home market? You could be missing out on valuable insights from other regions, and even worse, making decisions based on incomplete information.
Right, so it's not just about the AI being good. It's about being globally consistent. The source uses a retail example that really clicked for me. Imagine an AI that predicts inventory needs. If it only works in one country, you might end up with warehouses overflowing in one region while stores in another are dealing with constant stockouts.
Exactly. And the source doesn't stop there. It goes on to highlight some truly compelling benefits of scaling AI beyond, just solving inventory headaches. One that stood out was enhanced agility.
Okay, yeah. Being able to react to global market shifts almost instantly. That sounds pretty amazing, like
Okay.
almost science fiction-y. But how does that actually translate into a competitive advantage?
Well, think about a company operating in multiple countries with varying economic conditions. By scaling AI, they can get real-time insights into those different markets and adjust their strategies accordingly. They could quickly shift marketing spend, tweak pricing models, even optimize their supply chain logistics, all based on what their AI is telling them about those specific regions.
So it's not just about reacting, it's about being proactive and getting ahead of the curve. The source also mentioned a McKinsey study.
Oh, yes. The one that found companies scaling AI see a 20–30% boost in efficiency compared to those just doing things locally. That kind of efficiency gain can be a game changer, impacting everything from your bottom line to how quickly you can innovate and bring new products to market.
That's a number that's hard to ignore, especially for those higher ups making the decisions about AI investments. But let's be honest, this all sounds a bit too good to be true. Reading through the source, it's clear there are some serious challenges involved in scaling AI globally.
You're absolutely right. It's not a walk in the park. The source lays out some very real obstacles, and to be honest, even I was a little intimidated reading about them.
Data privacy alone sounds like a regulatory nightmare. GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, China's PIPL. It's like every region has its own set of rules.
And keeping up with those regulations is just the tip of the iceberg. You also have the issue of integrating your shiny new AI solutions with existing systems. Many companies operate with a mix of old and new technologies across different regions, and getting everything to play nicely together can be a huge headache.
That makes sense. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Sometimes you just can't force it.
Exactly. And then there's the cultural piece, which often gets overlooked.
Wait, culture impacts AI.
Absolutely. The source makes a great analogy. Think of AI training data like learning a language. A chatbot that's perfect in English might be utterly useless in another country if it hasn't been trained on the right data in the right cultural context.
Okay, starting to see how this gets complicated quickly. So we've got regulatory hurdles, integration headaches, and cultural complexities. Anything else I should be worried about?
Well, we can't forget about talent gaps. Finding people with the right AI expertise can be tough, and those gaps are often more pronounced in certain regions. You might have a fantastic AI strategy, but without the right people to implement it, you're going nowhere.
Okay, so scaling AI globally is definitely high risk, high reward. But the source does offer some solutions, right? It lays out several categories: regulatory alignment, unified AI infrastructure, data management. It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and that's why this deep dive is so valuable. Let's break down those solution categories and really dig into the most impactful strategies, the ones that are going to make a difference for you.
Perfect. So where do we even begin?
Yeah.
The source starts with building the framework for scaling AI, and I have to say, it's surprisingly specific.
It is. You can't just jump into this blindly. The source emphasizes the need for a clear strategic approach. And that starts with understanding your current AI capabilities. What's working well? What's falling short? What are your existing data sources? And how reliable are they? Once you have a solid understanding of your starting point, you can start setting those measurable targets.
So no more vague, be successful goals, right? We're talking specific, quantifiable objectives.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting. Prioritizing those AI use cases. You can't scale everything at once. Choose the areas where AI has the potential to make the biggest impact on your business and start there. Maybe it's customer service, maybe it's supply chain optimization, maybe it's something else entirely.
So once you've got your goals and priorities straight, what about the technology itself? The source mentions cloud solutions, hybrid systems, even on-premise options. I have to admit, this is where my head starts to spin a little.
It's a lot to take in, but it's actually pretty logical. The source breaks it down well. Cloud platforms offer the most scalability and flexibility. Think AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. These giants are built for global reach. But
There's always a but, right?
there is. Data sovereignty and compliance can be tricky in some regions. Some countries have very strict regulations about where data can be stored and processed, and those regulations don't always align with the global nature of cloud computing.
So that's where hybrid systems come in.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine a financial services company operating in multiple countries. They might use the cloud for the heavy lifting of AI, like processing massive amounts of data, but keep sensitive customer data on their own servers in each region for extra security and to comply with local regulations. It's about finding the right balance between leveraging the power of the cloud and meeting those specific compliance needs.
That makes a lot more sense now. And the source also mentions some specific AI platforms that are known for scaling well, like DataRobot and H2O.ai. Maybe something for our listeners to check out later.
Absolutely. It's always good to have concrete examples, especially when you're starting to explore the technical side of things. But even with the right tech, we can't forget about compliance. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Keeping up with global data laws seems like a full-time job in itself. How do you even begin to tackle that?
Well, the source stresses compliance by design. Instead of trying to tack on compliance as an afterthought, which can be a recipe for disaster, they emphasize the importance of building those safeguards into your AI from day one.
So no more slapping on a Band-Aid solution later.
Exactly. We're talking about data minimization,
Right.
only collecting the data that's absolutely necessary. User consent tools that are clear, concise, and easy to understand. And this is where it gets really cutting edge, the rise of explainable AI.
Explainable AI. That sounds intriguing, but I'm not quite sure what it means. Can you elaborate?
It's a fascinating field. Essentially, it's about making sure your AI's decisions can be understood not just by the tech folks, but by regulators, users, even the average person on the street. This transparency is crucial for building trust and making sure you're complying with those ever-evolving global data laws.
So it's not just about the AI doing its job, it's about being able to explain how it's doing its job.
Exactly. And that ties into another key challenge we touched on earlier, the cultural piece. Remember that analogy about training data being like learning a language?
Yeah, it really stuck with me.
Well, the source goes deeper into how different cultures view things like privacy and technology adoption. What flies in one country might be a total no-go in another. It's not just about translating your AI. It's about understanding the cultural context in which it's being used.
Okay, so what are some practical ways to address this cultural piece? I'm starting to realize this is way more complex than I initially thought.
The source suggests including language and culture experts on your AI deployment team. You need people who understand the nuances, the unspoken rules of a particular region, and don't underestimate the importance of getting feedback from local users. Their insights are invaluable.
That makes sense. It's like you can have the most brilliant AI in the world, but if it doesn't resonate with the local culture, it's not going to be successful.
Precisely. And speaking of success, the source also emphasizes the need for standardized AI development, no matter where in the world your teams are located.
I noticed they mentioned something called version control, which honestly sounds kind of boring, but I'm guessing it's actually important.
It's crucial. Imagine having different teams updating the AI in different ways with no way to track those changes. It would be absolute chaos. Version control helps keep everyone on the same page, ensuring that the AI is updated in a consistent and controlled manner across the globe. It's like having a detailed history of every change made to your AI so you can always track back to specific versions and understand why certain decisions were made.
Right, so no rogue AI running wild in some remote branch office. Got it. But let's be honest, all this theory is great, but
You want to see some proof that this actually works. You want real-world wins.
exactly. Give me some examples, some case studies that show how this global AI scaling thing is actually playing out in the real world.
Well, you're in luck. Your source provides a treasure trove of case studies from companies across different industries. Let's dive into 3 compelling examples that show the breadth of what's possible when AI is scaled globally.
Perfect. Hit me with it.
First up, we have a multinational retail chain facing a familiar challenge, keeping their online recommendations relevant and engaging across diverse markets.
We're talking about a multinational retail chain struggling to keep its online recommendations relevant across, diverse markets. It's one thing to have a great recommendation engine, but how do you make sure it's actually resonating with shoppers who have different cultural preferences and buying habits?
This company had the AI, but it was struggling to adapt. Their solution, as the source describes it, was regional adaptability. Rather than trying to force fit, one-size-fits-all recommendations, they kept their core AI engine, but empowered local teams to fine-tune it with regional data.
That makes sense. What a shopper in Paris wants to see is probably completely different from someone browsing in Bangkok. But did giving those local teams more control actually, move the needle for the business?
The results speak for themselves. According to the source, this approach led to a 25% increase in customer engagement. People were clicking on those tailored recommendations more often, adding items to their carts, and ultimately buying more. It shows the power of balancing global scale with local nuance.
It's a win-win. Customers get a more personalized experience and the business sees a boost in sales. Okay, so retail makes sense, but I'm curious to see how this plays out in a more complex industry. The source mentions a global bank trying to up its customer service game with AI.
Ah, yes, the bane of many a customer. Those chatbots that pop up on banking websites, sometimes they're helpful, but often not so much. This bank wanted to go beyond those basic chatbots and create a truly seamless and personalized customer service experience powered by AI. And they wanted this to work flawlessly, no matter where in the world their customers were banking.
That's a pretty ambitious goal. What were some of the key challenges they faced, and how did they overcome them?
The source highlights 2 key strategies that were critical to their success. First, they built a centralized AI architecture, but with the flexibility for local teams to customize it, for different languages and cultural norms. So the chatbot in Brazil might have a slightly different personality than the one in Germany, but they're both drawing from the same core AI brain, ensuring consistency in the information provided.
So it's like having a global team of AI agents who can speak the local language, but they're all working from the same playbook. That's pretty clever. And the second strategy?
Compliance. They knew that dealing with financial data meant meeting some of the strictest regulations out there, especially with GDPR in Europe and other emerging data privacy laws around the world. They had to make sure their AI was not only smart, but also playing by the rules everywhere.
That sounds like a potential minefield. How did they navigate those complex regulatory landscapes?
They went all in on compliance. According to the source, they actually created a dedicated compliance team whose sole job was to keep up with those ever-changing global regulations and ensure the AI was always following the rules. They built those compliance measures into the AI from the ground up, not as an afterthought.
That sounds like a smart investment, even if it's an expensive one. I imagine the cost of non-compliance, those hefty fines we talked about earlier, would far outweigh the cost of building a dedicated team.
Absolutely. And beyond avoiding fines, this focus on compliance had a direct impact on their customer service goals. The source reports they saw a 25% reduction in average response time to customer inquiries, leading to happier customers. Plus, by automating those routine tasks, they freed up their human customer service agents to handle more complex issues.
It's not about AI replacing jobs. It's about using AI to make those jobs more efficient and impactful. I like it. Okay, one last case study. Give me something completely different from retail and finance.
All right, let's move from the world of numbers and transactions to something even more personal, healthcare. This international healthcare company wanted to use AI to predict potential health complications in patients.
That sounds almost like science fiction. Minority Report, but for medical conditions. But instead of predicting crime, they're trying to prevent serious health issues. Am I on the right track?
You're exactly right. The source describes an AI platform that analyzes patient records, treatment histories, and all sorts of data to flag potential risks. Imagine being able to identify patients who are at high risk for readmission or complications before they even leave the hospital.
That's incredibly powerful. But I bet this one came with some unique challenges. Healthcare systems vary so widely around the world, and patient data privacy is incredibly sensitive.
You're absolutely right. This company had to navigate a complex web of regulations and cultural sensitivities. Their solution, partnerships. They teamed up with local hospitals, research institutions, and even government health bodies to ensure they were both getting the right data and doing things by the book in each region.
So collaboration was key. Like they realized they couldn't go it alone and needed to tap into local expertise and relationships to make this work. What about the results? Did this ambitious AI project actually deliver?
The results are quite impressive. According to the source, this AI platform helped them reduce hospital readmission rates by a whopping 40%. That means patients were getting the right care at the right time, avoiding unnecessary hospital stays, and potentially even saving lives.
Wow, 40%. That's a significant impact. And I imagine there are cost savings involved as well, both for the healthcare system and for the patients.
Absolutely. By identifying high-risk cases early on, they could allocate resources more effectively and prevent those costly readmissions. It's a powerful example of how AI can not only improve healthcare outcomes, but also make the system more efficient and sustainable. These case studies are really eye-opening. They're starting to paint a picture of what's possible when AI is scaled globally. But I keep coming back to this idea that it's not just about the tech, it's about the strategy, the partnerships, the cultural sensitivity. It's a whole new way of thinking.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Mm.
And that brings us to the final and perhaps most important part of our deep dive. How do you measure success and ensure you're constantly improving these global AI implementations?
You're exactly right. The source emphasizes the need for ongoing monitoring, feedback loops, and, this is key, a commitment to continuous learning. The AI landscape is changing constantly, so you need to be ready to adapt.
It really is a question that, sparks the imagination. We've talked about how challenging it is to scale traditional AI globally. But generative AI, that feels like opening up a whole new box of possibilities, and maybe a few Pandora's box type problems too.
It is exciting and a bit intimidating at the same time. The source mentions using generative AI for tasks like creating marketing copy that's not just translated but actually tailored to different cultural nuances, or for developing chatbots that can have genuinely nuanced conversations in any language.
The chatbots are what really get me thinking. We've all experienced those frustrating interactions with chatbots that just don't get it. But imagine a chatbot that can understand, not only the words you're saying, but also the cultural context, the unspoken rules, the subtle cues that shape communication in different parts of the world.
It's a whole new level of customer interaction. And the source points out that generative AI can go beyond language. It can create images, videos, even entire virtual worlds that are customized for different regions.
Okay, that's where my brain starts to melt a little bit. Virtual worlds. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does, doesn't it? But think about the potential applications for global businesses. Imagine onboarding new employees around the world with a virtual training program that feels incredibly real and immersive regardless of their location. They could interact with virtual colleagues, practice real-world scenarios, and learn about the company culture in a way that's engaging, effective, and tailored to their specific needs.
I can see how that would be a game changer for global companies struggling to create consistent training programs across different regions.
Yeah.
But all this talk of AI-generated content, virtual worlds, it also makes me wonder about the potential downsides. If AI can create such convincing content, how do we prevent misuse? What about deepfakes, misinformation? It feels like we're opening up a can of worms here.
You're raising a crucial point. As AI becomes more sophisticated, especially with the rise of generative AI, the ethical considerations become even more important. We need to think about safeguards, regulations, and even new AI technologies that can help us detect and mitigate these risks.
So it's not just about building the technology, it's about building it responsibly,
Right.
with a clear understanding of the potential consequences, both positive and negative. And that responsibility extends to thinking about the impact on the global workforce.
Absolutely. Generative AI has the potential to automate certain tasks, potentially displacing some jobs, but it will also create new opportunities, new roles that we can't even imagine yet. We need to be preparing people for this shift, equipping them with the skills they'll need to thrive in this AI-powered future.
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting to think about all the possibilities and the challenges that lie ahead. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the strategic framework for scaling AI to the nitty-gritty of data privacy, cultural nuances, and the ever-evolving technological landscape. It feels like we've only scratched the surface.
We have. And that's the beauty of it. The world of global AI scaling is constantly evolving, and there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to discover.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you, our expert guide, for leading us on this fascinating deep dive. And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us. We hope this has given you a better understanding of what it truly takes to scale AI solutions across global enterprises and perhaps even spark some new ideas for your own journey.
Remember, the future of AI is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play in ensuring it's a future that benefits everyone.